There's a lot shaping the market right now. Some geopolitical moves, a few developments in wheat, and even seasonal factors starting to come into play. Joining us today to break it all down is Bertrand Oesterle, VP of Clearing and Execution Sales at StoneX. Welcome back, Bert.
Morning, Joanna.
So let's start with some of the geopolitical headlines from this past week. How are they shaping grains and oilseeds?
So there's three elements that come to mind. The first one is reassurance for US farmers. We were saying last week that US farmers were slightly concerned about the Trump tantrums against Canada that could potentially have affected the price of fertilizers, potash in particular, for farmers in the US, as the US import mostly from Canada. That has very much abated this past week in the sense that the US House has voted against Trump to say you can't put tariffs on Canada, it's too sensitive. Now, obviously, that bill still needs to pass through the Senate, but it is providing some relief currently. The second element to watch out for is Iran once again. So the US president mentioned that he may think that a change of regime might be the best solution for Iran. So whether he wants to enforce it or let it happen, that's a different matter. But it is creating uncertainty, especially in the energy world, and the energy impact could come into spillover support into grains and oilseeds in particular. So we have to watch out. And this morning, for example, Iran was mentioning that they were closing the Strait of Hormuz for military exercises. So we have to be careful. And then the last element is some festivities. So we have a lot of people in the market who tend to think that trading is going to abate a little bit over the coming week. And it's mostly because of the Chinese New Year and Ramadan. So I take the opportunity to wish our colleagues and clients in China and in the Muslim world some brilliant festivities.
Yes. Happy Chinese New Year and Ramadan to everybody. So let's move on. Is Euronext week still in a tight range? Is there anything bearish or bullish that we should be paying attention to?
So wheat on Euronext has remained in a tight range, as you mentioned. We had the option expiry on March yesterday. That was pretty uneventful. And the March-May spread remains around flat. So yesterday it was trading flat. This morning, as I walked into the room, it was trading plus 0.50. And it provides a good opportunity for people who still have a March position, either long or short, to try to roll that position over to May, so from March to May, around flat, around no cost. So that's something that we're going to focus on. And in terms of bearish or bullish elements, we've had a bit of both over the past week in wheat. On the bearish side, we saw India coming in to say that they will allow exports of wheat and wheat products. So some 2.5 million tons of wheat and 500,000 tons of wheat products. This is something we've been discussing for about 2 years. We've been saying wheat is very politicized now in India in the same way as onions are. And for the past 2 years, people were saying, will India import 0 to 5 million tons? And I was very skeptical. I was saying the production in India has been consolidating. It's been bigger every season. Why would they need to import? It was the political element. And that has come to an end. They're now exporting. So it's an additional potential 3 million tons on the market. People tend to think it will be feed wheat quality, but it adds on to supplies. At the same time, we've seen some good news in terms of crop conditions in France. They're 91% good to excellent for the winter wheat. And that's at a time when Morocco is still saying that they've received so much beneficial rain for their wheat output that some clients tend to think that the Moroccan output might be twice as much as last year. I mean, obviously it still needs to grow, but it is looking pretty good so far. So that's the bearish side so far. On the bullish side, we've had some concerns from some market participants about the logistics in Ukraine and Russia, mostly because of the intense cold. So we're hearing that the exports from Russia are slightly delayed. But the Russian government, despite some talking about some winter kill there and there, the Russian government is very reassuring, saying that they still believe in a 91 million ton crop for the current season and a 47.5 million ton export potential. And then when we look at something else that happened over the week, there's been some confusion in the market about Algeria. So Agrimaire came up to say that Algeria was looking to buy supplies from France. We've known for the past few years, since Macron mentioned some unfavorable comments about Algeria. It's been difficult for France to be able to sell to Algeria.
Yeah.
And this week, Agrimaire said that Algeria had bought 5,000 tons of wheat and some 15,000 tons of barley. But the market said Agrimaire got it wrong. So we still don't know quite yet. Apparently the 5,000 tons of wheat have gone to Spain, not to Algeria. So it's going to be interesting to follow over the next few weeks if there is confirmation of business being done between the two countries or if it was simply a mistake.
Okay. What about corn? Any news or updates worth noting there?
There's been very little in the world of corn over the past week. One thing to mention is the very slow pace of the end of the season for harvesting in Ukraine. So the Ukrainian corn crop is about 93% harvested, and the Ukraine government stating that it may take all the way to March to get the last 7%.
Yeah.
It's very unusual. Normally that crop should be fully harvested, and there is some concern that the last 7%, I should say, may have some quality issues. So for the moment, the range of estimates remain 30 to 33 million tons, the 30 being the government itself.
Okay.
When we look at the US exports remain about 6% ahead of the pace required to get to the USDA annual target. And if we look at Brazil, the first corn crop is 22% harvested compared to 29% last year, and the second corn crop is 31% planted against 36 last year.
Okay, so let's move on to one thing that we talked about, I believe, last week. Is there any additional information on the US EPA? Any announcement on its biofuel decision or anything, any indication of what's happening?
Not just yet. So we had the 45Z guidelines a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Since then, the market is awaiting an EPA decision that would comfort those guidelines. So the market is expecting a bullish statement from the EPA from a biofuel point of view. We're still expected to be end of February or beginning of March. So that has not changed yet. There hasn't been any update just yet. But we've got a NOPA crush figure coming in at 5 o'clock this afternoon UK time. And pre-reports from NOPA, we've seen some estimates which are showing a 218.52 million bushel crush for January compared to 224.99 the previous month and compared to 200.38 the previous year. So it would be still a very decent crush. So on the back of the potential EPA announcement that may come over the next few weeks and the crush in the US that remains very strong, we've seen the specs reversing their short position into a long position. That's what we were expecting last week. And on the back of it also, we've seen people looking more at what's going on in the US rather than looking at what's going on outside of the US. And when we look at the US soybean export, they're still running 6% below the pace of what we need to get to in order to reach the USDA target for the year. And there's been no Chinese buying confirmed over the past week.
Earlier you mentioned that the US House voted to block Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada. Did that include Canadian canola as well?
So not directly, but if the US are not putting percentages of tariffs on Canada, it means that Canada and China can continue renewing their ties. So we are still looking very much at what China is going to buy in terms of Canadian canola supplies. But there's been some how shall I put it, uncertainty coming out of China this week. China came out saying that they will continue their anti-dumping probe up to the 9th of March. So the new Canadian prices without tariffs to China are supposed to start on the 1st. And now China is saying, well, we're going to extend our probe to the 9th. So there's a little bit of uncertainty about timing, but China said that they would have a fair solution, a fair decision on the process. So we'll have to wait and see.
And did any of this have any spillover effects on Euronext Rapeseed?
So Euronext is still gaining momentum from a higher canola, from a higher oilseed complex, mostly on the EPA and the 45Z guidelines I've mentioned. Rapeseed is pushing on, and it has traded this morning before I came into the room up to 94 on the May. It's a very interesting area. The May, August pushed up to 25 yesterday, 25 and a quarter as I walked into the room. And there's a sentiment from some participants that that spread that May, August could go all the way to 35 because of tightness in France. Whether or not it's going to happen, we'll have to wait and see. But the important bit is that we're getting closer to the 500 mark once again. Last time we got to 500 plus, we saw a fair amount of farmers selling, and people, although the farmers don't have an awful lot much left to sell, people expect that farmers are going to start to look at the prices around 494 where we are currently, all the way to 500, to sell potentially more, to create treasury in order to hold on to those wheat supplies or barley supplies when prices from a farmer point of view are seen as not good enough, not favorable.
Okay. And one last thing before we let you go that I'd like to cover. Is there anything new out of South America on the oilseed side?
So we've had a few little updates. So for example, we've had the Rosario Grain Exchange and the Baggy, which is the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange, coming up with some estimates for Argentina. So they've put the crop at 48.5 million tons. It's a bit more than what we had seen before. And then for Brazil, the soybean crop is about 1/5 harvested so far.
Okay. Bert, thank you so much as always for your time. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.